Om Shri Sairam. We begin today's session with three Omkars.
Om. Om. Om.
Om Shri Sairam. Offering our most humble and reverential pranams at the divine lotus feet of our most beloved Bhagwan. Respected elders and my dear brothers and sisters, once again welcome you all to this online Sai session. Today, we are blessed to have with us Brother Harish Krishan B. Brother Harish Krishan B is an alumnus of the Sri Satyasai Institute of Higher Learning and was introduced to Bhagwan in the form of a photograph at the tender age of 7 years. He joined Swami's College at Prashanti Nilayam in the year 2003 for his MBA program. After completion of his MBA, he was handpicked by Bhagwan himself to work in the Sri Satyasai Sadhana Trust at Prashanti Nilayam, where he worked till 2012. His mother currently resides in Prashanti Nilayam and serves in Bhagwan's ashram. Brother Harish was blessed by Bhagwan with a rare opportunity to serve him as his personal assistant since 2005. Among the chosen few, Harish was also blessed to be a part of Swami's entourage to Kodaikanal, Mumbai, Hatchi, and Chennai during the divine trips. Harish currently resides in Bentonville, USA, where he serves Swami as the center president of the Sri Satyasai Center for Northwest Ankans in Region 10 of Sri Satyasai International Organization. On the professional front, Harish works with Walmart Inc. as a manager in the Global Audits Analytics Division since May 2019. Sorry. I would now request Brother Harish to share his thoughts with us.
Sairam Abhinav, thanks for the introduction. Most beloved Bhagwan, respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, it's a great privilege to be with all of you today and to help connect with Bhagwan on yet another occasion. If there's one thing which we have all learned in the years with Bhagwan, any activity we do, any service project we undertake, or any talk that we give, the people who receive anything which we do are incidental and or in another extent they are Narayanas themselves. The purpose of any of these activities is for the transformation of whoever it is that is having this opportunity to provide this service to themselves. That is the way Bhagwan transforms us. It was the 1st of April 2005. It was supposed to be my last day as Bhagwan's student. I had an interview lined up for the next day and I was to leave Prashanti Nilayam that evening. Morning, already Swami had not come for darshan and we had all branded that, and that was not very regular for Swami to not come for darshan during those years. And we said, okay, Swami has made us all an April Fool. And now it was the evening session. I was excited. I was nervous. I was happy. I was sad. I was ready. I was a wreck. I was grateful. I was sorry. Everything felt new. Everything felt old. I was here. and yet I was not. There was a shift in the quality of silence in the Sai Kulwant Hall. And that, as we all know, is the sign that Bhagwan is coming for darshan. He was moving too slow. Come fast, Swami. I want to give you this letter and see you eye on eye for maybe the last time. Will I ever get this chance again? He was moving too fast. Slow down, Swami. Let me relish every aspect of your personality. Your smile, your frown, your conscious indifference, your chuckle, your mock anger, the way you take the letter, the way you adjust the hair, the way you lift your kerchief, the way you keep it back, and the way you pour your love endlessly on all of us. Is it really my last day? Can I not be your student anymore? Will I be relegated to sitting among the old students? I love you, Swami. I love you. I love you. This is probably a summary of the thoughts which are going on in my head every minute during the darshan of Bhagwan that day. I was seated on the third line, but I was seated directly in front of Swami's chair, which was kept on the stage. As Bhagwan's chair arrived, I was tried to stretch out to give the letter to Bhagwan, but Bhagwan did not look in this direction. He crossed and he went ahead. And yet I was not disappointed. Because what a darshan it was. When we enjoy something, thinking that it is probably the last time we are going to enjoy it, we are able to absorb things which we normally would not. And that was one of those days. So Swami's chair stopped behind the portico and we expected Swami to go inside the interview room, as was typically the case those days. But what was happening? Swami was waltzing towards the stage. This was unexpected. So again the hopes came up and the letter went up. Frequently these letters were empty. They were just letters which were there so that Bhagwan has an excuse to call us close to him. But that day it was not. That day it was exceedingly verbose. It was extremely emotional. It was the day when I was trying to tell Swami that to thank him for the 2 wonderful years as his student. They say that once a Sai student, you are always a Sai student. You may graduate from the university, but you cannot graduate from its chancellor. And that is what keeps us grounded. That's what keeps us conscious that there is always something we have to learn from Bhagwan, and the learning never stops. So Swami comes on the stage and he looks at me and calls me to give the letter. This was unexpected. Had already felt extremely satisfied. I was already in cloud 9. Now, where do you go from cloud 9? How much more higher can he take you? So I walked up there stumbling on top of my other brothers, who probably did not even notice that because everybody's eyes were transfixed on Bhagwan. This was a bonus darshan for everyone. Walking near Bhagwan, I offered the letter to Swami. He took the letter and just dropped it nonchalantly on his lap. He was not concerned with the content of those letters because he's going to make the whole thing irrelevant in a second. He looked at me in the eye and asked, "Where is your warden?" Professor Shivashankar Sai sir, who was our warden during those days, our beloved warden, it's often considered an oxymoron. But it was a very different situation for us in Prashanti Relay. It was an exceedingly loving elder brother. I remember my mother asking me once when she came for darshan, "Who's that boy, young boy whom Swami keeps calling and speaking to every day? How come he gets to sit so much in the front?" So it took me a lot of convincing to make her believe that he's actually our warden. And he's not, he definitely appears ageless, but he is pretty mature at that time. You remember all these, the WhatsApp forwards and calendar quotes that we read, that God will never ask us a question for which he has not given us the answer. So a few days prior to that day, I had gone to Shivashankar Sai sir's office to probably take permission for clicking pictures in Kulwanthal, or one of the various things that we need to go to ask permission to him for. So he had just asked me to sit, and I was just seated in the back chairs in his room. And he was on the call with someone, and he was talking to that person about his plans for the summer. Apparently, UGC required all the professors to be cross-trained in other universities, and he was telling the schedule of where he was going, when he's going to be there, and all that. And having listened to all of that, and actually me being me, I'm not someone who has a great retentive power, but that for some reason had got absorbed in me. And when Swami asked me this question, like a tape recorder in which you had pressed the play button, I was talking about all that which I heard in that call. But I was not even aware of what I was speaking. It was just something which was coming. It was very, very, very similar to the blank letter which we hold, and which is an excuse for Bhagwan to call us close. And this was again just yet another excuse. The answer was coming through, but in my mind, there was this magic word which students talk about called form. So I was thinking, oh my God, am I coming to form? Wait, how come Swami is calling me and speaking to me something, probably which I was not holding my letter for, and not something which Swami would typically speak to a student about. So form, for those of you who are not very familiar, is one of those typical student terminologies where so when a cricketer is in form, he sees the ball as big as a football, right? So he's able to do whatever he wants with it. And maybe when a soccer player is in form, he's able to see all the gaps when he's running through to the goal. Similarly, a student who is in form gets a little bit more than average attention from Swami. And that is probably like a lot more valuable than any of the things the athletes experience. So that was the story of literally how Swami dragged me back and helped me stay back for a little longer in his divine presence. And as for the student learning, it continued. I'm going to share a few very interesting instances which happened during the times, during those glorious years. I'm not going to harp too much on messages, because Bhagavan knows what message to each person has to get from any of the experiences which we go through. So pardon me if if the flow does not appear to be towards a particular subject, because it's not intended to be. It's merely intended to be a sharing of wonderful moments. Next, I'm going to move to January of 2007. I am, as was introduced by brother, originally from Chennai, and grew up watching the superstars of Tamil cinema, and enamored by them. And in fact, one of the reasons I had wanted to join Prashanti Nilayam was, as a student, was after I got my admission, I had gone to Kodaikanal, and the way Bhagwan communicated with his devotees, standing on top of the balcony, and with just gestures of his finger, with a smile, with a charm, with a presence, it was a sight to behold. I had come there to look at a person who was called as God. I went back a hero worshipper, because here was a person who had the kind of presence, who had the kind of glamour, if you would call it, and who had the kind of charisma that he could make everyone feel at ease, and he could make everyone feel happy, irrespective of whether they were apparently accepted or rejected in his presence. I give you this background because now was the in January 2007 was the time when two of my heroes met. So superstar Rajinikanth had come with his family to have Bhagwan's darshan on one of the January cool mornings of 2007. I call it a cool morning, but even in January it was sweltering heat in Chennai. So Bhagwan comes for darshan, and the actor gives his, I think, a bouquet of roses or something which he was carrying, and Swami took that, blessed it, blessed the family, and he moved on. I was appearing to be cool. It's like, okay, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just one of the many people who are coming to Swami. But in my mind, it was like, did Swami spend enough time with him? Does Swami realize that he's a superstar? All those thoughts were going in my mind. And that day, I think the darshan started around 10:15 in the morning. And Swami started going for rounds. So the way they had arranged in Sundaram was, there were like sections of people who were made to sit in various parts in the front lawns of Sundaram. It was very nicely organized. There were like good pathways in between for people to enter and exit easily. And those pathways also provided opportunity for Bhagwan to choose to go in those paths. So Swami was going round after round that morning, and it appeared to us, to the intelligent people around Swami, that Swami was searching for someone. So Swami had finished one round, two rounds. Now he was about to go into the third round. So that is when I thought, I will take mercy on the Lord and let him know whom he is looking for. So I went and told Swami, Swami, I know we are searching for, you're looking for that actor who has come, Swami, Rajinikanth. He's actually in that side. He's not sitting with the devotees. He's standing there outside Sundaram Gate. Then Swami looked at me with, he knew that so many eyes were on him, and probably it was not the best time for him to really show what he was feeling. So with a very calm poker expression on his face, he looked at me and said, "No, noor muskunte baguntundi. If you keep your mouth shut, it will be good for everyone." So with the message received loud and clear, I stepped back, and Bhagwan continued on his third round. Now what happened? He came to the gates of Sundaram. And then Swami told to told Sevadal standing there to open the gates. It was a momentous occasion for me as well, because way back when I was a child, and all that we knew about Swami was as a photograph in the altar. We would get the news whenever Swami comes to Chennai, to either Abbotsbury or Sundaram. And we would absolutely have no clue about what darshan times were, when Swami would come for darshan or anything. So my dad would just take me on a scooter, and we would just go outside Sundaram, and wherever we find place, we'll park the scooter. And by that time, all people would have already been seated inside, and there would be no way for us to go in. The gates would have been closed. And my dad would lift me on top of his shoulder. And there Swami would be giving balcony darshan, and from the top of my father's shoulder, I have seen Swami's darshan. And those very gates were now being opened. And the discipline which only Swami's and Swami's organization can develop, outside the gates, where Swami was not expected, where the door was not expected to be opened, and yet we found that the devotees were standing in a very disciplined way, with a good path for Swami to come out and stand. There was Sevadal there as well. We don't know whose prayer it was that it appeared so strong that Swami had to break open the gates and come out and give darshan. Right in front, there was a mother and a small child. The child was probably about, 7 or 8. So Swami calls that boy. And that boy is literally confused. He doesn't know what is happening. He comes, he stands in front of Swami. Swami materializes a chain for him, puts it across his neck. The boy still doesn't know what is happening. He's just standing there and staring at Swami. We can hear the sound of his mother sobbing in the back with absolute delight, which only a mother's love can feel when the child is being blessed by the Lord. Everybody else is transfixed, and they're filled with joy and filled with emotion. They're so happy. And yet, in this ambience of absolute elation and happiness, it seemed so obvious and so evident that the happiest person in this assembly was none other than Swami himself. There was such a beaming smile on the face of Swami. The happiness which only the Lord gets when he is able to connect with his devotee. Could Swami have immediately opened the gate and gone out? Could he not have immediately called this boy inside and given him a chain? Of course he could have. But then around him were all these Sai students. We all had to learn this lesson. We all had to learn that Bhagwan will search the depths of the worlds to find us, to pull us in, and to chain us. No matter how far we go, no matter how much we shun him, no matter what gates we use to close ourselves from him, he will crash open everything and he will bring us back to him. It is that assurance, it is that joy which can always make us feel that home is just a few steps away. I am next going to go to another incident which happened in Prashanti Nilayam. So there were about 5 students of Bhagwan who were serving him at that time. There used to be a joke that there are more people behind Swami now than in front of him. And Swami used to call us the Pancha Pandavas. And so we were sitting there in the interview room, and Swami was busy reading the letters and all that. But on that particular day, he was feeling very, he was kind of in a very mischievous mood. And he started asking each one of us our name and what it means. So he started with Brother Nitin Acharya from Bombay, who has literally been an Acharya for all of us Pandavas, if we dare call ourselves that. And he said, Swami, my name is Nitin, and it's another word for Krishna. In his own simple, subtle way, he gave direct response to Swami. Unfortunately, my ego was too high, and my need for attention was extremely on a high level as well, and I had to give him a more innovative answer. So then Swami looked at me and asked, what about you? I said, Swami, my name is Harish. Hari means monkey. Then Swami looked at me like, what are you saying? And then I started telling Swami about his own Chinnakatha. I said, Swami, in your Chinnakatha, you tell that Narada once goes to Narayana, saying that he has had enough of a bachelor life, and he has found a princess whom he now wants to marry and settle down. But there's only one problem, that princess wants to marry only somebody who has a Harimukha. And as someone who has served you for so long and so many years, I'm sure that you are ready to give any boon to me. So I just came here to ask you for that boon, to give me a Harimukha. So Vishnu says Satastu, and he comes down to the palace for the Swayamvara. And everybody is laughing when he enters, and he feels like, oh my God, see, that is the power of Vishnu. His very face brings so much joy and laughter to all the people who witness it. So with the same gait of having the face of Vishnu, he walks towards the princess and stands ready to receive the garland. The princess gives one look at him, shrieks, and runs inside. And that is when he apparently looks at his reflection somewhere and sees that his face is that of a monkey. So he goes back in anger to Vishnu, and Vishnu clarifies to him, saying that you are a Sanskrit Pandit. Do you not know that Hari also means, the Sanskrit word Hari also means monkey, among many other things. So cutting long story short, I was telling Swami this Chinnakatha with, expecting him to marvel at my sense of wit and timing and all those kind of things. There was a flat expression. I was turning around. Nobody in the interview room was laughing. I knew my whole thing had gone flat, and I was probably in trouble. So Swami kind of looked at me and said, see, your parents have kept your name. You probably should not be mocking it, something like. He did not actually even say that. There was all that were read in the expression which he was giving of absolute and utter disappointment at my answer. And such was the utter disappointment with my answer that he did not even ask the other three boys about their names and their meanings. And Swami told to open the door, let's go to Bhajan Hall. I did not dare to look at the other boys, because I knew that curses were flying in my direction with very sharp arrows. So Bhagwan comes to the Bhajan Hall, and he is seated on the throne. And I was trying to forget whatever incident happened inside, and try to move on with my life and all those kind of things. When to my utter surprise, Swami continues his conversation in Bhajan Hall. And he starts asking a few students, the Bhajan students there, as to what was their name and what is the meaning of their name. So I was thinking, okay, so he probably wants a more receptive audience, and that is why he's doing this. And he was not getting that insight, so he came out to the Bhajan Hall and he started having that same conversation. And he was on that right corner of the Bhajan Hall. He was talking to the students there, and I was sitting near the door, which is where I typically sit, ready to run at any point. But Swami suddenly from there, he turned, looked at me and asked, what is your name? And as I was about to say my name, so I didn't even complete Harish, I just said Hari. And then immediately Swami said, Hari ante monkey. the whole bhajan hall started roaring in laughter. I was first filled with shock. It is the same thing which I said just now, and that was received with so much, so much disappointment inside. And now Swami is cracking the same thing, and everybody is laughing. But such is the infectiousness of the laughter that Swami generates that I couldn't help but join along and laugh. It was much later, many years later, that when I look back at that incident, I realized that such is Bhagwan's ownership of us. They say that, that Sai Baba is a very possessive God. I've heard such thought phrase very much. It's like when you go to Swami wants, Swami is not willing to share you with anyone. That is the kind of thing which people talk about, and I mean, I have laughed at it. I've not really, I really not really understand the depth of that till like when this struck me. Such is his ownership of us that even we ourselves do not have the right to mock us. He reserves even that right. If he wants to joke on my name, he can joke on my name. Even I don't have the right to do that. And that gave a very great, the sense of joy. And that smile, that laughter was probably a lot more genuine when it finally sunk in about what it is that Bhagwan was probably trying to drive home. The next story that I'm going to share was probably not one of the most wonderful stories we want to hear, but it's still a story which is very important for us in many ways. I think it was still the year 2007, unless I'm mistaken, and the 11th standard students were putting up the gratitude program in Prashanti Nilayam. And it was a very good program, and Swami was sitting and he was enjoying it. And suddenly there was this scene of Shirdi Baba's Mahasamadhi, not Mahasamadhi, the 3-day Samadhi, when he leaves his body for 3 days, and he tells one devotee that he's going to come back, and and that devotee takes care of Baba's body, and after 3 days he comes back. So that was the scene which was going on, but the scene had just started and Baba had just gone into Samadhi at that point. So when Swami told us to take him to the interview room, typically in the middle of a program when Swami goes inside interview room, that is for because as I told earlier, right, it is much more than the joy which we get when we come close to him. Swami gets a multitude of that joy that his devotees coming closer to him, and so much so that Swami, that feeling of giving is so high for Swami that he needs to make everyone as happy as they could, and he would usually go inside and start selecting what gifts to give. It's usually a lot easier for gents. It's just it's probably either a white shirt and pant or a white safari suit. But for women, he has to choose the color of sari which has to be same for everyone and it should satisfy everyone as well, which is very tricky, and which literally proves his divinity. And so Bhagwan had gone inside interview room. It's a student program, and typically after a student program, there are no gifts which used to be shared. Some used to have a few occasions when he would give clothes to all the students, but after a specific program, that doesn't happen on a usual basis. But having said that, our minds were calculating about where the shirt pants are kept, where the safari suits are kept. If Swami asks where it has to be brought, those were things going on in our mind. But Swami goes inside the interview room, and he was just seated. He was very silent. He was not even reading letters. He was just sitting there silently. And we were actually enjoying that as well. We were doing Pad Seva to Swami. And after some time, Swami looked at us and said, Swami used to call Shirdi Baba as old man. And this despite the fact that Shirdi Baba was there only for 80 years, and by that time, Swami's age was more than 80. But Swami always referred to him as Musalabadu. So Swami said, see, that old man, he went like that into Samadhi, and he came back after 3 days. Soon I am also going to do that. But I will not come back. And then the where Swami Samadhi is there now, Swami said that that is where my Samadhi will come. And like the old man, I will also speak to my devotees from the Samadhi. So then we kind of, we did not know how to respond to this. And then immediately we said, Swami, why are you talking all this? Is something wrong? You are a Paripurna Avatar. You should be there for at least 100 years. Don't talk about such things, Swami, and all that. So Swami looked at us, he smiled, but he did not correct himself or did not say that I'm going to make any changes to my plan. And then he just went back to the stage. So yes, Bhagwan continues to communicate to all of us through his physical Sannidhi in Prashanthi Nilayam. But the fact that he used that word probably also means that he is reaffirming what he always said, that the depth of silence, the voice of God is heard. And that is the state of Samadhi. When we are able to withdraw our senses from seeking external stimuli, and if we just reject everything that the sense is telling us, which is probably the only way by which I understand this concept of going inwards. Because everything in Advaita is just that. It's about negating. It is not about saying, okay, what is going inwards? Okay, examine what is not. So anything which is facing outward, and what is facing outwards? Our senses. So if we just reject anything which comes from our senses as the truth, then what we are left with. In fact, I remember one of these questions which used to be haunting me during my so-called waiting days. So that was the time when Swami would come for darshan, and after morning darshan, we used to run to the library, and I used to make sure I pick up one spiritual book and one fiction, so that I can I make sure that I increase my wisdom. At the same time, I also don't fall asleep. So, but as the days went, I started realizing how much more one book is more interesting than the other. And what this concept, and that is the time I used to read about all the various enlightened souls who have been there and whom we have, like Ramana Maharishi, like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. I was able to start reading about all of them and starting to understand what it is to live a life as someone who's able to provide service to Bhagwan. So that time, this question always used to keep haunting me about this: who am I? Right? There's a saying that Ramana keeps asking to look about who am I, and when we're trying to introspect, okay, so you already told who am I, then the answer comes, then you say that I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, but then finally, okay, you say what? You say that I am Atma. And what does that mean? What have we gained from that? So that always used to be a question for me. So then in one of those things, I read that this concept that when you keep telling yourself what you are not, then the answer of what you are should come from within. It should not come from your intellect. Again, don't give words. And Atma is again just a word. Don't give it any words. Just say what it is not. And then just when you're able to maintain that silence, then the answer will come from within. Again, does this mean that I have experienced all this and do I have I realized and am I actually sitting on the chair right now or am I floating on the air? Well, the answer is of course none of those things. But even at an intellectual level, to have that understanding that okay, once again, even in the path of spirituality or even the path of jnana, you come to the same conclusion that nothing is in your hands. And the blessing has to come when it has to come. It comes when he chooses. And all that we can do is reject all that which we know is not truth. Again, I promise that I will not get into philosophy, and I am dabbling along. I'll move right on. So I wanted to talk about this somewhere in the middle so that we don't end on a note like this. So I'll move on to some more of the fun instances which happened in Prashant Nilayam and elsewhere. I'm now going to move back closer to 2005. So this was the time when I was, wet behind the ears, as they call it, in his service. And those were also the days when Bhagwan was creating one illusion around him. So way back in 1940, when Mother Ishwaramba came, Swami said, Maya has come. And then he made her mix all the food which was collected and asked her to feed him. And then Swami said, Maya has left me. But at no point did Swami say that I left Maya. So that is something which he carries along with himself. Like Rama came with bow and arrow, Krishna came with the chakra, Swami came with Maya. And that has been his weapon of choice, and that is what he has used for fooling us and making us learn our lessons. So this was the time when Swami used to, at least to his students, he used to pretend that he had no idea where he was. So every day Swami would come for darshan and he'll call some students and ask, where is Puttaparthi? And these students will be like, Sir Swami, this is only Puttaparthi, we are right now in Puttaparthi. No, we are not here. Let me go search. So like that Swami would go for a round and he would come back. All this was going on this happened like for a week. So some of these dramas which Swami does is very elaborate. It is not something which he just does, comes, it's a few minutes and it's over. This was a very elaborate setup. And so then he calls me inside interview room and then he says, in that moment of absolute clarity, he says, okay, have you got a suitcase packed? I said, yes, Swami, I have suitcases there. Swami, you can pack in no time. I can pack. Okay. Pack a suitcase and keep it in the security van. I said, okay, Swami. So I had packed the suitcase of my clothes and I kept it in the security van that day. Again, the next day came. Swami started the morning with, okay, where is Puttaparthi, all those things. And Swami got into the car and he came inside Kulwant Hall. Again, had that conversation with some more formed boys and had the same questions with them and they gave that same response. And Swami left Kulwant Hall and Swami started going straight. I thought, okay, Swami is probably going to go for a round, but then he extended further and then he was crossing the institute. So then we thought, okay, maybe Swami is going to go to the primary school. Swami crossed primary school. We thought, okay, probably he's going to go see Sai Gita. But Sai Gita was not in her shed, which is absolutely unusual because Sai Gita always knows when Swami is going to come to look at her and she makes sure that she is there. And so it was pretty obvious it was not Sai Gita. Swami continued. He crossed the boys' hostel. So then he thought maybe Swami going to go to the planetarium. Sorry, planetarium is before the hostel. That's why Swami going to go to the airport. Airport was crossed. Then we thought, okay, now it's clear. Swami is going to go to the super specialty hospital. Probably there is some devotee who was there. Super specialty hospital was crossed. So Now where is he going? Okay, is he going to go to Brindavan? So at this point, if my memory serves me right, so brother Satyajit was driving the car. He stopped the car and asked Padmanabhan sir, who was back in the security van, to take over, and then we continued. So then we thought, okay, probably Swami is either going to go to Bagyapalli or Brindavan. So Bagyapalli came, Swami crossed Bagyapalli, and okay, then Swami, it's okay, we're going to go to Brindavan. So Swami went all the way to Brindavan searching for Puttaparthi. And Swami goes there, gets out in Trai, and once he goes inside, the senior devotee who's there, Swami looks at him and says, I felt like having one meal with you, so I came. So Swami goes there, he has that meal, and again after some time we are returning back to Prashant. I think it was the next day, unless I'm mistaken, or it could be the same day, I'm not very sure. But one thing which I remember was I had brought my suitcase, so I had gone ahead and changed my clothes in Brindavan. So one of the senior devotees who had accompanied Swami, he came to me and he was very surprised when Swami was leaving back. He said, see, we all came together from Puttaparthi. None of us knew where Swami was going to go. How would come you have a change of clothes here? So then I said, no sir, Swami had already told me previous day to keep a suitcase ready in the security van. So then that person said, oh, okay. So then it is very clear that all of this is a drama. So Swami had realized that he's going to do all this, and he is going to create a confusion around him, the way he loves to do. But the one person whom he knew was probably too immature to understand what needs to be done. He has given clear instructions on what needs to be done. So now I had the suitcase ready and all that packed. So that is when, we kind of realized that one thing which Swami had made very obvious at this point in all of our lives is that Bhagwan accepts us exactly the way we are. Yes, he provides opportunities for improvement. He provides us with ways by which we can improve ourselves. But very often, if you see, it's like Swami starts giving discourses about students, about what ideal people we are. And we all will be sitting staring at each other and laughing, because we knew what we are. And yet Bhagwan keeps that such high ideals simply because he wants to create that friction, that see, even when you're in a job, right? And as long as you are comfortable in a position that you are, then you're just going to stay there. But the moment you start feeling like, okay, I need to be in that next position, then you start feeling the tension, you start feeling that need to perform better, you start feeling that need to reach out to people and to network, or whatever it takes you to go to the next step. But for you to do all that, you need to have that tension, you need to have the look at that next position, so that we can try to move there, so that you start feeling uncomfortable where you are now. And that is the tension which Bhagwan constantly creates for us. He keeps making sure that he shows us where we could be, so that we start feeling uncomfortable where we are now, and start feeling the need to take whatever action that we need to take to move. But beyond that, Swami would very seldom he looks at you and says, that I want you to make these changes. He has done that. He has done that with a few devotees whom he knows is ready at that point to do it. But for most of us, he does not. In fact, I remember that most of the scolding sessions I've received from Swami, when I've got really left and right, were all for mistakes that I have not done. And so at some point in my mind, I knew that, okay, okay, Swami knows that I have not done this, but he's telling me all this to drive home a lesson so that I don't do this particular mistake at different time, and I probably would have. I would have probably done the same mistake on a different occasion when Swami would not have scolded me. But on this occasion, when I did not make the mistake, Swami would scold me so that I'm comfortable that I know Bhagwan knows that I have not done that, and it is not directed at that particular error that I have done. But at the same time, he has driven that message saying that that is not acceptable, and that is something which I would need to change. That is something which I have to not do in the future. And it is very interesting how he would use many other devotees as as a shoulder to rest the gun to shoot us with. And the very fact that he was using their shoulders indicated how much elevated they were and how much of a strong personality that those people were. So continuing with this thought, I'd probably go into an incidence of anger of Bhagwan. So what happened was one of those, I was mentioning about the place where Swami's chair usually stops, which is just behind the portico in front of the interview room. And this was the time when Swami was coming in Porte, where Swami's chair used to come out from the car. And this particular day, Swami chose to not stop in his usual place, but come all the way to the front of teacher's block, which is when you're looking at the stage to your left. So Swami's chair comes and stops there in front of the teacher's block, and as we are all creatures of habit, the other student was also there serving Bhagwan at that time. He went and sat on the right side of Bhagwan when Swami's chair comes down, as was his usual habit. But Swami's chair started coming down, and Swami looked at the student, and he started shouting at him. The students got so scared, he just got up and bolted behind the car. So Swami's chair came down, and since I was the other person there, I took Swami's chair, and Swami sat on the stage. He spent some time with Vedam and with students and all that, and then he decided to go back inside the interview room. So when Swami was going inside the interview room, this student took this opportunity to to apologize to Swami. I said, I'm very sorry, Swami, I made you angry. You Avuna, eppudu chesavu? Is it true? When did you do it? Then, no, Swami, when you were coming down from the car, you looked at me and you shouted at me, and I went back. Nena, did I shout at you? So I was like absolutely shocked that how could you even suggest that I am someone who can shout at you? And the student was like very happy with the fact that Swami probably forgot about it, and the matter ended there. But then when we introspected on this, we realized how frequently when we get angry because we lose control. Right? We lose control of our senses, and then we become angry. But Bhagavan uses anger as a tool. So at that moment, when we talked about it, we realized that the way where he was sitting, because Swami's position was such, he was probably blocking Swami's darshan for a lot of devotees sitting on the devotees block. Because it was literally like an eclipse, right? Like the moon near between the sun and the earth. So Swami, at that point, we never know whose curses were flying at him. That Swami was beautifully coming down from the car, and they all wanted to have the darshan, and this boy was there blocking their view. And so probably Swami wanted to both make sure that there is no blockage between him and his devotees, and secondly also to make sure to save this student from all those curses. So immediately Swami used anger as a tool so that he would disappear from that place. Because if Swami had told that softly, he would have probably gone closer to Swami and blocked Swami even more, and then heard the instruction and gone. All so much precious time. Every second of Swami's darshan is so precious. How many of us have had Swami's glimpse for like 1 second and come back feeling like you've had hours of conversation with him? That is the amount of fullness, the amount of completeness that which only Bhagavan can give. Because when he spends time with anyone, even if it is 1 second, he's completely with that person at that moment. And we feel the full depth of presence, the full depth of understanding which Bhagavan can provide at that very short time. And so even that few seconds could be very valuable. And so Swami made sure that he disappeared from that area. So that way anger was also just one of the many tools in his repertoire, and that's how he used it. And as I told you earlier, he also used it in a ways to make sure to communicate what is acceptable and what is not, while at the same time sometimes making us comfortable while doing it and at other times not. Next, I want to talk about another very interesting aspect which flows after we talk about anger, and which is when Bhagavan chooses to distance himself from us. Professor Bhagya talks about the 3 stages in a student's life. Initially, when you come to Prashanthi Nilayam as a student and Swami starts speaking to us, even a little, if Swami takes a letter from us, or he pats our cheek, or gives us his vibhuti or something like that, we feel like we can't stop sharing it with people. We go around, do you know what Swami did with me today? Swami took my letter. I had written so this with Swami. I written Swami that if he took this letter, this is what it means. And so he took my letter, that therefore this is what it means. This is what I actually mean to him. You just can't stop talking. They'll be talking constantly. Then comes a time when Swami starts calling you for interviews, calling your parents for interview. Swami materializes a ring, a chain. Then that tone comes that, see, I am an important person. So make sure you buy a very good deodorants and all that. And make sure you're well decked up. So that, see, Swami wants to spend time with me. Let's make things more comfortable for Swami also. It will be, if I'm also wearing good clothes and smelling good, Swami will feel comfortable having me around. So I am important. This stage, Professor Bhagya calls it the stage of the Banerjee. You're carrying a banner that you are an important person. And then comes the stage when Swami completely chooses to ignore your very existence in this planet. So he would come talk to the person to your right, to your left, behind you, and he would not even acknowledge that you are present in that whole assembly. And that is when you finally realize that there's nothing you can speak, and then you become Mukherjee and sit. So it was in one of the Kodais, unless I'm mistaken, it's Kodai 2009, when I had this opportunity of being the Mukherjee. And Bhagavan was completely ignoring me and he was not speaking to me. But as always a Sai student, there's still a lesson to learn, because for me, I was such a person that I never expected that I would get whatever opportunity I had got. And in fact, to say the least, I thought that I was not qualified in any way, and I didn't know why Swami was troubling himself. And when this happened, I thought, okay, finally Swami is getting this opportunity to move on to more qualified people, and it's now time for me to leave. And so I started enjoying this Kodai with thinking that, okay, the way I was talking about the April 1st darshan, thinking that it is going to be my last darshan of Swami, that way I was enjoying that Kodai, thinking that it's going to be my last Kodai. And in fact, I felt happier than usual. I was sitting somewhere in the back and I was smiling, and I was feeling very comfortable. And then Swami realized that the lesson that he was trying to drive was not being received. So then Bhagavan started in a typical way, by which when a student is in the Mukherjee stages, when Swami is talking to the people around you and not talking to you, then it means that message is for you. So Swami says, I'm going to tell you a story. And then he tells a story about the journey of a river. He says the river starts from the top of a mountain and it is flowing down with full gusto. And as it's flowing down, it's collecting all the minerals and all that and becoming more and more richer and more prosperous. And as it is crossing and going, it is satisfying the needs of so many animals and human beings, and all of them, they start worshipping it. Right? So, with all that inflated sense of worth, the river flows down, but yet the river realizes that it has only one objective, and that is to merge into the sea. So it flows gushing down, and it goes all the way to the ocean. And once it sees the ocean, it is so happy. It is having more and more waves, and it goes with full gusto into the ocean. And what does it receive? A whack from the ocean. The ocean whacks it right back, and and the river has to flow back, and it forms its own. It goes and forms its own pool. Swami said that is what is the backwaters which we see. But the river does not get comfortable with this. It does not feel comfortable that, okay, let me go be a pool. Because the river has got only one objective. Its only objective is to merge back into the ocean. So irrespective of how many other times the ocean whacks it, the river continues to flow with that one thought that I have no other purpose in my life other than to merge in you. And with each whack, it loses every sense of importance that it has generated through the path, with all the nourishments which it received, and with all the crops which it helped make grow, with all the animals whose hunger it satisfied, with all the humans which worshipped it. It loses all that sense of worth, and then realizes that the only thing which is important to it now is that it merges with the ocean. And when it humbles itself such, and it starts flowing down, then the ocean comes up like a big wave, something literally like the Abhaya of Swami, and merges the river back into itself. And then the river realizes that it was never different, and it has always been one with the ocean. So Swami narrated this story, and then I had just to, at least again, everything which Swami does, it has got messages to so many people in so many ways, and who has to take what message from that, we never know. But for me personally, that seemed like a wake-up call that, okay, don't ever get comfortable, get satiated with what we think we have received from Swami. Because with Swami, there is no retirement. There is only retirement, as Swami says clearly, right? So even after 60, you come back and you retire yourself in a different role in Bhagwan's organization. So our objective as his students, or our objective as his devotee, is to constantly only have that one thought, that there is no other destination for us, there is no other journey for us. Anything else which we may do, it is probably something which the river has to go through. But ultimately, the journey is only to merge back into him. And if we don't forget that, and irrespective of how much pushbacks that we get, if we keep continuing that journey, then ultimately we get our goal, we get what we have come here for, and we will get to really understand that we are what the tension which Swami has always created by calling us Prematma Swarupulara, that we are not different from that. So with those few experiences and the unfortunate lessons which I had to communicate, which I hope I had not, but again, the very thought that I have done something implies some stupid thing called doership, which Swami has very clearly implied that which by itself is blasphemy, right? The very fact that you think that you have done something denies the fact that you realize that you are merely his instrument. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm so happy to be here with all of you today and to be able to reconnect with Swami. Again, as I shared in the earlier, it's this whole thing is every time we share, uh, every time we communicate anything, it's always for because Swami has chosen this path so that we can help improve ourselves. So I'm grateful to Swami for this opportunity, and I'll be happy to take any questions at this point, and we can explore the answers together. Saira.
Sairam Harish brother, first of all, thank you for accepting our warm welcome and this taking this opportunity and sharing your thoughts with us. I think your entire talk about your incidences just expresses that it is, Swami who's driving each one of our lives, be it your waiting days incident of 2005 or be it the Kodai incident where you were telling that it is about Mukherjee, each student life goes through it. So I think it is just, we are just instruments in his hands. And finally, he is the doer of all of our things in life. So, Mother, I would like to take some questions which have come up. The first question being, since you spent so much time in close proximity with Swami, what are the key things to learn from Swami's life inside Yajur Mandiram? What are the some of most important things to Swami inside Yajur Mandir?
Good question, brother. I mean, one thing which we have to remember is that, and which we often forget as devotees, is Swami, apart from being the omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent Bhagwan, was also the head of a very big organization. So, Yajur Mandir was also, like Swami has told many times, like Puttaparthi is my office. So, Yajur Mandir is also in a sense that it was his office, and that is where Bhagwan would constantly interact with all his office bearers, and he would talk constantly about the individuals in it. So there are two aspects to mainly Swami's conversation, since you brought it up. One is about cost control. So even every people from trust and all would come on every monthly basis, Swami would look through the books. He would make sure that we are not, because Swami is very clear that every cent which comes here has not come for any other reason, but has come because they want to offer themselves to in Bhagwan's service. So every paisa has to be accounted for, and we have to ensure that nothing, no money is used for things which it need not have been used for. So that is something which Swami would constantly talk of, yeah, as an organizer. But having said that, finance is just a very small part of it, and Swami's whole philosophy of MBA itself is man management. I remember many instances when Shri V. Srinivasan, who was the All India president that time, he used to come for dinner, and he would talk about some remote corner of India where he had visited and he had gone to some school, and he would be talking about what great service the school is doing and how many students are getting benefited and all those kind of things. Swami would reply with a very simple statement about some particular devotee who was in that school and say that person is doing very good service. That how more than anything else that one human being there or someone who had touched Swami deeply. So that human connection, which again Swami has a one-on-one connection with each and every person who is not only not only directly there in his presence, but also who is associated with his name anywhere. So those were probably the two management lessons, if you want to call it, which I learned from Bhagwan in being in his presence in Echirman. Next question, brother.
The second question which we have got is, how can we continue to feel Swami's presence even in current times, wherein we don't have the physical presence of Bhagwan now?
See, again, the Swami has told very clearly that there are two types of devotees, right? One is like the baby monkey and the baby kitten. So the baby monkey is constantly trying to hold on to the mother, and it's the responsibility of the monkey that it doesn't let go and doesn't fall. Whereas the baby kitten, it just goes around doing whatever it does, and when it needs its mother, it just meows. The mother kitten and the mother cat comes and picks up the kitten and goes. So let us first give up even the need that we have to do something to connect with Swami. Give that responsibility back to him. Let's just pray to him that he constantly keeps us connected to him. Personally, for me, it's like my relation, the way I know, without any sense of doubt that Bhagwan is there at that point and he's the one who's taking care is the fact that I know he has the access to my heart. So some of the things which I didn't share during this particular talk is about the various times when Bhagwan has simply been able to go inside and change how I feel about a particular situation, how I would feel about a particular relationship which I have. So, but now I just want to share about since we're talking about the current thing. I want to share about now the recent experience which happened was when I went for my job interview for my current position which I was going to, and that particular time I had got a back catch or something like that, and I was in a lot of pain, and that pain kind of circulated into my mind into a negative space, and I started talking about how about talking about one thing leads to another negative thing, and then you start going into down a drain. So I was going into that stage, and later that afternoon I was to go to this company for the interview. So I just go to the kitchen to drink a glass of water. So I just go to the kitchen, I'm filling the glass with water, and suddenly a gush of happiness comes from within me. There's absolutely no reason why it should come. Nothing had happened for which could have led to that. On the contrary, I was going through a very negative space in my mind. But that gush of happiness which came from within made it very clear that, okay, I am not alone. There is someone else here who is providing that gush, and that person is sitting inside the heart, and he has given that happiness. So suddenly this whole thing comes back to context. Okay, finally, what is this job for? Why are we doing any of those things? And that context is something which only Bhagwan can provide. So again, yes. So how do I feel personally? How do I feel connection with Swamis when incidents like this happen? When I feel an emotion which does not seem to be satisfied intellectually by all that things which is happening around me, then I know that it is happening through an external stimuli, which is probably the most internal thing that I have. So that is probably my response. I don't get dreams, I don't get visions. So this is as close as I can go.
So the next question which we have here is, you came across any incident wherein Swami talks about physical health and mental health? If you can share any of the incident wherein Swami talks about physical and mental health.
It's a good question, brother. But again, so as Swami has always created multiple paths, right, about how we can go to him, and somehow my personal chosen path, or the path which he chose for me, is one of non-doership, and the thought that the saying that things happen, events unfold, there is no individual doer thereof. So that was something which I was able to connect with a lot personally, and I had the opportunity once. Very very seldom would I speak to Swami about anything personal or spiritual, because it was very typically so people used to ask me, how does Swami call you? Does he call you Hari, Harish? Swami usually calls me Hey. So that was kind of the relationship, right? It was more about serving what Swami wanted. You just go ahead and do that. But very few times like this, when I had the opportunity to really talk to Swami about what I'm going through and all that. So I asked Swami this thing. Swami, this is what I am reading and this is what I'm connecting with. Is this true? Is it true that whatever happens only according to the will of God, and it is not, it is out of our hands? Swami replied, for some reason, again, a very some of the most important times in my life, Swami has replied to me in Hindi. I don't know why. And then Swami said, "Aisa bhi dekh sakta hai." Swami said, "You can look at it like that." So again, that is how I connected. So the answer to your question about uh, mental health or physical health, what to do, my simple thing is to not do. My simple thing is, like, at least for mental health, it's like when you're feeling something, it's like, Swami, I'm not able to handle this. You please handle it. I don't want to take it upon myself. And physical health, probably by looking at me, you know that I'm not really doing a very good job of maintaining it. So I would be the last person who's capable of replying to that. But again, this is a very personal one-on-one thing, and that varies from person to person. How Bhagwan has connects with each of us and how he wants us to go through this is very different. And mental health is a very important question, and it is. I just feel I'm just sharing what I'm sharing because this is what I go through, but I'm definitely not qualified enough to respond to that, and you should do further introspection to get an answer to this.
So, another question which we have here is what was the feeling when you served Swami, the Lord who pulls each one's life like strings? What was it like pulling his royal chair, and how did it change your life?
Very beautiful question, brother. And to make it very clear, I never pulled his chair. When Swami says, "You are the boy who used to push Swami's chair," he says, "No, I was the one who was pulled behind Swami's chair." So that is literally how things unfold. But see, the most important thing for me was the fact that Swami could accept me exactly the way I was. And very often in my life, and which is very relevant to the question which was asked earlier about mental health, I had this exceeding feeling of unworth. I used to really feel like that I'm a very disgusting human being. I don't know how the world is able to tolerate me, and I used to have this need, even when I was a student. If the monitor writes my name on the blackboard, I couldn't take it. I had that feeling that I needed to be someone who people only appreciated, I could not take chastisement. I could not take it because then I would go into a very negative space. So when Bhagwan held my hand and walked, to me that was like something incredible. I was like, how could someone as pure as Swami be able to touch my hand and be comfortable with it? So probably I am not as horrible as I think I am. So this particular thought was probably my number one most important thing. So this unconditional love is a very simple thing to talk about in theory, but when you actually experience it, it is something which is exceedingly life transformative. To know that there exists someone in this world who loves you without any condition. I remember Krishna Premi tells in one of his talks, it's like wherever you go, you have to carry something. If you go to the house of somebody, you have to take a gift and go. Or if you're going to heaven, you have to carry punyas. If you have to go to hell, you have to carry papas. Otherwise, they will also not open the door. But if you say I have nothing, the only person who will open the door is Narayana and Lakshmi. Or in our case, it is Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. So the fact that nothing that you have done or nothing that which you think you are is important to him. He sees you exactly as he sees you, and he is able to accept you the way you are. That is probably for me the most important thing which for me personally, from this opportunity of being close to him. And yes, there are it was very interesting because very often, as I was just mentioning, it becomes a very uh, what to call it, an office kind of a relationship, a mundane kind of relationship, because it becomes the relationship between a boss and his subordinate. So very often it was like that, and uh, you would forget whom you are actually serving, and it becomes like you go through the same office tension, the office stress kind of situation, where you want to make sure that you are keeping everything ready and you are not doing mistakes, and the boss doesn't call you up. And I remember one of the times in during Dashara. So that time we were on duty in Kulwanthal, and when Swami goes to Purna Chandra, he would either ask us to accompany him, or he would tell us to stay there. Or even if he doesn't tell anything, we would stay there. So that is what usually happens. But on one particular occasion, Swami specifically looked at the two of us who were there and told us, "You stay here, you don't come." And he went to Purna Chandra, and all the devotees also followed from Kulwanthal to PC. And Kulwanthal was entirely empty except the two of us. So then we were, since Kulwanthal was empty, we walked towards the ladies' side, and from there you could look inside Purna Chandra. So we were standing there, and we were having his darshan, and there, just a few moments back, we had seen Swami as the person who was, who was the project manager behind the Dashara function, who was making sure that everybody was getting the things they needed to be there, the correct people were there in the right place, and then and we were all there just to make sure that whenever he asked for something, things are ready, and all those kind of things. That is how we were just now seeing it. And now from Kulwanthal, from a distance, we're literally seeing Swami as much as we can see the flame in a candle, right? So that was the distance from which again we were getting to see him. So Swami comes inside and he stands in front of the Yajna and he's I mean, that was not the Purnahuti day, it was not the final conclusion, but just Swami sitting there in front of the Homakundam, and how we could see the flame of the Homakundam merging with the flame of Bhagwan's robe. And we could really say, oh my God, we are actually serving God. That finally when the thing hits you, and it needs that, you need that reminders constantly for us to really remember that okay, what we are doing is something beyond a job, something which we are doing which has got because Swami makes you forget, because that Maya is something which he constantly carries with him, and he makes you forget, he makes you think that you are doing one of the regular things. And how often I've sat there complaining to Nitin brother and Ramakrishna brother about why Swami is doing like this, why he's doing like that, and all those kind of things. But then you just go back and realize whom you are serving and what kind of a huge opportunity it is. So yeah, it's a mix of the two, but overall I'm very grateful, and the most important thing is about how accepted I felt. I hope I'm not taking too much time on these questions, brother.
No, Bhaiya. We'll just take one or two questions more. One question which has come up is, please share one of the several incidences you would have come across wherein Swami has convinced you, or rather he has told you that he is the Purna Avatar. Any incidents if you would?
That's a very good question, brother. And very interestingly, Swami has told me the opposite of that, in the sense that to not be concerned with those definitions. I remember again one of those early days when Bhagwan would make me feel very comfortable and to go and ask him any question type of thing. And when I was kind of subjected to that, to the extreme Maya which comes with proximity. So that's like everybody around was talking about that one experience by which they were like fully convinced that Swami is God, and this is what happened to me, this is what happened to me. Everybody keeps telling, and I was reading like way too many books at that time, and I was reading about way too many experiences of devotees and all that. I was feeling, why am I not getting any of this? And I started getting I was thinking, getting impatient. I was like, I wanted that one experience which defines my relationship with Swami, and which I can go around talking in Samarpans. So that when that feeling comes so high, right? It's like you need to, it will burst within you if it doesn't come out. When it came like that, I again, that was a space which he provided that time. I went inside the interview room and I told Swami, I'm losing faith in you. Then Swami was like, what do you mean? Really cool. Swami, I'm not able to see you as God. So this is the moment I expected that, Swami will become Rama or Krishna or something like that, and be like, wow, okay, this I can hold on to, and then I can be this. But Swami stunned me by a response. He said, Prema unda. Do you have love? And that was easy to answer. I said, yes, Swami, that love is there. And Swami said, Prema unte chalu. If you have love, that is enough. It doesn't matter to me whether you have faith in me or not. It doesn't matter to me whether you see me as God or not. It doesn't matter to me whether you see as Purna Avatar or whether you see me as a Rishi or a Muni or whatever you want to see me. It doesn't matter to me. All that which matters to me is that you love me. Love is the only thing which he had to give, and love is the only thing he wanted to receive, and that's the only thing which he yearned for. So it's like, so such became my relationship with Swami at that point, that even if Swami were to come on the stage one day and say, see, I know you're all sitting here thinking I'm God, but actually I'm just, a magician, and I've just done a few service projects. All this has just been a play which I've done. I just want you to all know that. And if he goes inside, it would have not made any relationship, it would have not made any change to my relationship with him. Because it did not matter what he is or how he define it. I mean, it's like, if today you say that Swami is Purna Avatar and tomorrow somebody else who comes and says that, no, this person is there who's not a Purna Avatar, he's a Paripurna Avatar. Then you start chasing behind that person. I mean, these are all words, they're all definitions, all that mean nothing. The only thing which really matters is what we feel within. And if we are able to, and honestly, before I came to Swami, nobody else mattered to me except myself. The only time I had cried before I came to Prashant Nilayam was for myself, out of self-pity. I had not even cried when my mother had an accident, or when my dad had an accident. God, we have had a share of accidents in our life. But the first time I cried was when Bhagwan had a fall in Vrindavan. And we were all sitting and praying that he cures himself. And that was the first time I cried. And I remember, despite the fact that it was such a sad day and we were all really crying that Swami should heal himself, the fact that I could cry for him generated so much happiness within me. Because it was the first time I was able to actually cry for a different person other than myself. So this ability of that he could generate within me to be able to really love somebody as more important than myself, that for me is the most important relationship with him. And that for me is what makes Bhagwan so special for me. It is not because he is an avatar or Purna Avatar or Paripurna Avatar. Simply because he is someone who could love me unconditionally, and who could really create the situation by which I could love him unconditionally.
Just one last question we will take. Can you relate any instances wherein your absolute surrender to him in moment of crisis in your personal life or family life redeem yourself, though you were in such close proximity with him for a long time?
Beautiful question, brother. But the only change there is, instead of saying because of my surrender, I would say it was because of his slap. So again, this was one of those interesting incidents of when unnecessarily doership crops up and creates confusion in your head. It's a very simple incident, but it was one of those defining incidences for my relationship with him. So when my parents used to visit Prashant Nilayam, the only real service that I would be doing for them is arranging a room and arranging a car to pick them up from the railway station to bring them to the room. So I had done that on that particular occasion as well, but the usual driver who picks them up, he was not available, and he was sending some other different driver. So this person's number I had forgotten to get from the original driver and share with my parents. And that day Swami had come very late for darshan, and Swami was sitting in the stage in front of Vedam boys, and sitting next to Swami, it was not possible for me to do anything, and I had not yet taken care of this particular requirement, that to share the number of the driver with my parents. And I was sitting next to Swami, and I was feeling fully flustered, thinking like, oh my god, the only thing I'm doing for my parents is arranging this taxi, and that I'm not able to do. I'm sitting here stuck. Okay, this is the thought which came to my mind. Swami was continuing to look friend. He was continuing to listen to Vedam and be immersed in it. But in my mind, Swami gave a sharp jerk towards the left and looked at me. It does not actually happen. It's just that something which I felt. And I felt Swami telling me, it's like, you are sitting here in my service. Do you think I will not be able to take care of such a small thing for you? But that feeling was so real, the feeling was so complete that I was literally stunned into silence. And I remembered Bhagwan's most important message to me. నోరు మూసుకుంటే కూర్చుంటే బాగుంటుంది. If you shut up and sit down, that's the best thing you can do. So I literally did that. I just sat down, and so much so that I was so much at peace that even after Swami went inside interview room, I did not attempt to find out the driver's number or share it with my parents or anything. So after darshan, after dinner, after Swami had retired to his room, I went to see my parents, and that time I just asked them incidentally, like, hey, by the way, how did you come? So they said, no, this new driver was there. He came, he found us, and he took us, brought us. And it was such a matter of fact thing. It was, I mean, of course, that driver had never seen my parents before. He has no way for the driver to know who my parents were. And those were not the times when we had like WhatsApp photos and all that, where we could see each other's face or share those kind of things. But he was able to completely locate my parents, get them home, and it had happened so smoothly, so easily. There's nothing miraculous about it. Miracles are, again, as Swami says, sometimes when God chooses to reveal himself in that action. Because most of the other times it is just something which happens on an incidental basis. So nothing actually happened here. When you think about it, it was such a very boring thing. It was just one driver went in instead of another, picked up my parents and brought them home. But that particular slap which I had to get from Swami within my mind at that time kind of gave me that confidence that, okay, literally when you are sitting there in his service, then he takes care of you. And so that is the reason why we never really need to, as long as, at least, this may even be very restrictive what I'm saying, but at least as long as you are doing something in his service, then we know that definitely then whatever responsibilities of ours is there, it is being taken care by him. So
once again, thank you, brother, on behalf of all of us, for sharing your thoughts with us. It was really, this 1.5 hours have gone so quickly. These beautiful incidences about Swami. Every Sai session is really beautiful. Thank you once again, brother, for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me, Sairam.
We would end today's session with Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Jai Bolo Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba Ji ki.
Jai!